An old friend of mine is a cardiologist, and he told me something I think very shocking. 40% of first heart attacks are fatal. Now, for many people, this is a surprise. But for some, for a lot, there were warning signs: diabetes, family history, obesity. And luckily, a lot of people act on these warning signs before it's too late. Men's Health magazine runs this regular feature they call the Belly Off Club, that features someone like this man, Tom Larson, who lost 150 pounds. And every one of the articles describes what the magazine calls the wake-up call, that pivotal moment when the man realized something needs to change dramatically. He's running around with his kids and he can't breathe, or his doctor just says, "You're gonna die." People do change, sometimes in profound ways. They do what they need to thrive. Now, I think that we as a species and as a business community are getting wake-up calls. The first wake-up call is extreme weather, climate change. Over the last couple years, every January, Australia has had to change their weather maps to add 2 color bands to reflect temperatures ranging from 50 to 54 degrees centigrade, or up to 130 degrees Fahrenheit. And as Stephen Colbert, the US comedian who I turn to for insight and analysis, said, and I thought this was great, that's in January. Imagine what it's like in the summer. And this is how I know if people are with me. A little geography joke for the morning. But you know, it is a very serious issue. Last year was the hottest on record. This is happening all over the world. Droughts that are made worse by climate change. California, Texas. Anybody know what's going on in Sao Paulo, Brazil right now? They're almost out of water. The reservoirs are down to 3–4%. These are serious issues. So we are living in a hotter time, but the message that we're getting now from business leaders, from political leaders, is that this is not about some model or future prediction to debate, that it's today. We're getting this from people like Mayor Mike Bloomberg, from the former Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson. This report last year, the Risky Business Report, was profound. Said it's costing us billions, it's going to cost us hundreds of billions. The Pentagon's even talking about this as an immediate threat. The second wake-up call is a strain on resources. That's the crux of the conversation today. A couple years ago, China built 17 billion square feet of new space in 1 year. Now I want you to picture all of the commercial property in Manhattan, all the office buildings. Picture all the cement, steel, glass, everything that went into it. In that 1 year, China built not 1 commercial Manhattan, but 30. That's 1 year. This relentless pressure on resources, it's very basic supply and demand, has changed the way the world works. McKinsey & Company gathered together some data on commodities, metals, energy, food, everything that goes into our economy, into our lives. Looked at the price of all of it together and said, in the 20th century, the cost dropped. When modern business grew up, it was during a time of declining input costs. You know, volatility for little things like world wars, but basically down, down, down. This century, up dramatically. We wiped out 100 years of productivity gains in just 10. Now, in the last 6 months, there's been some drops in some key commodities, so we're down a little bit. But just look at oil. This is the one everyone says, oh, it dropped dramatically, and it did. But it's still 2 to 3 times the cost at the beginning of the century. Everything is more expensive. That's the reality. We're living in a hotter, scarcer, more expensive time, but we're also living in a world that is getting more and more connected every day, allowing people to ask more questions about every company, how they operate, how supply chains work all over the world. Everything is open to public scrutiny now. Now, this isn't just someone who makes his living talking about sustainability or environmental and social issues. Every year, the world's leaders get together. These are, prime ministers, presidents, governors, city mayors. They get together in Davos, Switzerland, and they poll them every year. What are the biggest risks to the world? And if you look at this year's list from January, look at their top 10 list, it kind of falls in 3 very clear buckets. This is my groupings, but one is obviously just conflict and collapse, things like disease, anything that can just undermine society. Second is the economy, concerns about equity, unemployment. And third is this bucket that I'm talking about today, climate and resources. And really, when you look at the way they rank them, climate and resources was more important to them than the economy. It was a bigger risk. But these are all connected. These are all really the same sets of issues. The unrest in Syria, the Middle East over the recent years, was in large part because of changes in weather, changes in the prices of food. These are connected issues. So my core message, really, is that these mega challenges are enormous risks. They are. But they are also huge opportunities. That this is now part of how business operates in a fundamental way. This isn't some side issue. This is not philanthropy. This is not corporate social responsibility, really. This is about, can your business thrive? Can it survive? Can it operate? If your input prices are rising, if your consumers want more from you, if your customers are asking tougher questions, are you ready for that world? And this is, according to my favorite billionaire entrepreneur, this is the greatest wealth-generating opportunity of our lives. And last year, the pivot has begun. Last year, the world spent $300 billion on just clean energy. That's a lot of money. So we are facing big issues. We're facing dragons. We need to conquer them. We need to change how we operate, how our lives work, how we do business. We have to be heroes, individually and as companies and as cities. My job in the world, in part, is to give people tools, to try to give them a sword. And my contribution right now is a set of frameworks, strategies, tactics, this big pivot. And what does that mean? What is the big pivot? In the book, I've got kind of 10 strategies. The core of what I want to talk about is what's called the vision pivot in the middle. It's about, how do we see the world? How do we ask questions? What's the heretical questions, the tough questions we need to ask? How do we set our goals? And we're fighting this kind of short-term pressure. Now, all of this combined is about building resilient systems, resilient cities, resilient companies, resilient people. Now, I live in the New York City area, and Hurricane Sandy hit a few years ago, and it kind of drove me to write this book. We learned how fragile we really are. The seas rushed into lower Manhattan, and the heart of the financial world went dark for 4 days because a part of the electric grid, a transponder, exploded. Now, call me crazy, but I think if your electric grid explodes when it's wet, it's not resilient. It's not very flexible. And we're realizing now we need to move away from old technologies, ancient fuels. Countries, continents are realizing that they're too dependent on old ways. Europe has realized that 1/3 of its coal, oil, and natural gas comes from this man. This is my favorite picture of any world leader in history. It's just remarkable, right? So, this is a despot controlling a huge portion of the energy. This is why Germany and Switzerland and others are trying to move off of fossil fuels as quick as they can. My work is with the private sector, though. Companies are also waking up to the benefits of radically reducing their resource use and moving to renewable sources. Walmart is the largest buyer of solar power in the country outside of the military. And when they announced a couple years ago that they were going to increase their renewable energy another 600%, one of the top executives said, hey, this keeps our stores up and running, no matter how bad the weather is or who else might be down. That's resilience. We can sell stuff. This is competitive. So imagine if your business didn't have to care what the cost of energy was or oil. This is resilience, protecting your money, making more money. But to do this, to pivot, we need to change how we set goals. I want you to imagine if we were all in a boat together and it was filling with water. What we would not do is say, hey, how much do you feel like you can bail today? And then maybe set a stretch target from there. No, we'd figure out how much do we need to bail to stay afloat. And we now know on a bunch of big issues how fast we need to go. On carbon in particular, PwC has used the numbers from the global scientific community and tells us we need to decarbonize the economy. That's the amount of carbon for every dollar of GDP by over 6% a year. We're going at about 1% per year right now. That's fast, but there are a lot of companies. The pivot has begun. This is just some of the companies that have committed to 100% renewable energy. A couple of them are already there. Apple, all their data centers in the US are powered by renewable energy, 100%. These are big targets, and there's big buying going on. On the waterfront, the science-based goal is to deal with the fact that water is not abundant in many places. It's in water-stressed regions. Companies are under threat. Their operations are under threat. So Coke, which relies a little bit on liquid for its products, has said we're going to replenish all the water that we use. This is the kind of goal that drives business, drives change. Ford looked at the climate change goals for the world starting almost 10 years ago and said, this is going to change how we think about our products. We're going to innovate around this. We're going to do new engines, more efficient engines, biofuels, electrification. And it drove them to announce last year that the Ford F-150 truck for 2015 would be 700 pounds lighter as they move from steel to aluminum. That's a resource revolution. And this is their #1 selling product. This is not a small niche part of their business. And that is heretical to ask, can we change our core product, make it more efficient? But it's not the most heretical thing you can do in cars, right? Tesla's asking an even deeper question. Do we need an internal combustion engine? That's the kind of question we need to ask as well. There are companies asking tough questions about their entire business. CVS last year said, we're going to stop selling tobacco. Now this was $2 billion in sales out of $120 billion, and a lot in the press said, oh, it's only $2 billion, which told me those reporters had not worked in a company, maybe, because $2 billion is $2 billion, right? Yeah. That was not a small issue. This was brave. But the question they really asked, I think, is can we stop selling products that don't fit our mission, our strategy of health? We have clinics in the back of the store. How can we sell tobacco in the front? Can we stop selling things that are not part of a prosperous, thriving future? The pivot has begun. Utilities are waking up to the pressure towards the clean economy. That 100% target on renewable energy means those companies are not going to buy traditional energy anymore. E.ON in Germany is spinning off its fossil fuel assets to become a renewable energy company. Here in the US, NRG has said we're going to cut carbon, and they are 70% coal today. We're going to cut carbon 90% by 2050. That's the science-based target. So can we sell less of the things that are not good for the future? On the flip side, can we sell more of the things that are? Kingfisher is a Home Depot in Europe. Actually, they'd probably like it if I said Home Depot was the Kingfisher in the US, but they're a home store, and they have set a goal to be net positive, meaning they want to help people build buildings that generate more energy than they use, so that the existence of the products they sell improve the world. This is possible today. This is a building in Seattle that generates more energy than it needs. But the deepest heresy of all is probably challenging the nature of consumption, asking questions about why do we buy the things we do and can we use less, and talking to your own customers about using less. This is a map of a floor plan of an office building. Each one of those little boxes is a printer. This story goes back a few years, but it's a great one. This is Xerox. What they realized was this was not tenable. Congratulations, market saturation. Okay, there's a printer everywhere. But companies were going to want to save paper, energy, time. They were going to want to move away from this. So Xerox helped this company map out a different path to this many boxes of multifunction devices. Now, of course, they said, buy them from us. This was sales. But what are they really doing? They're saying, what if we ask our customers to actually use less printing? We're going to help you do it. And when I talked to the CEO about it, I said, how can you justify this? And she said, well, Ursula Burns, she said, well, it's better if we do it than somebody else, right? That's the bottom line of a resource revolution. It's happening at the customer level too. The B2B conversation's a little easier, but it's really hard to have this at the customer level. Patagonia's always been out front on this. And they've been asking people the question, do you really need that jacket that you have? They've said to the world, we want to make gear that lasts a long time. You don't buy what you don't need. And they ran an ad a couple years ago that said, don't buy this jacket. Can you imagine? Don't buy our product. And they've actually grown while doing it because their products are the best, right? So you have companies pushing the boundary of what it means to even be a company, asking questions about purpose, tying what they do to larger ideas like bringing water and energy to the developing world, or like Unilever does with their Lifebuoy soap brand, helping people wash hands, teaching kids how to wash hands to avoid easily transmittable diseases that kill millions of kids before age 5. Now, I said earlier this wasn't about philanthropy. Now, and these kinds of stories sound like they are. And of course, there's an element of doing the right thing. But what this is really about, at core, if you take a hard look at it, is that there's a good business story here. Because if we don't bring water and energy to people, they can't buy computers, they can't buy shampoo. If you don't help kids survive easily transmittable diseases, they can't grow up to be a part of society and contribute. And they can't buy your stuff. This is about a very core idea. Business cannot thrive unless the planet and people thrive as well. We are not separate. So I ask you, how are you going to challenge how you normally do things, how business operates, how your lives work? What's your heresy? How will you be the hero in this story that we're building and telling? And what if the answers built our future? Because they do. Thank you very much.